Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. This is KidNativeBloodyElbow.com, joined once again by Zane Simon for the 6th round of UFC Fight Night 77, aka UFC Fight Night Sao Paulo, aka UFC Fight Night Belfort versus Henderson 3. I think every question has been answered. Vitor Belfort definitively can smoke Dan Henderson at will at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, like, I was weirdly compelled by the time the fight started in this idea of just like, here are two old dudes who have put themselves through hell and high water, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen. But I had no faith. You had no faith left in Dan Henderson at this point. You know?
No, I mean, being able to beat Tim Boetsch, that's why he got the fight, the rematch with Belfort. And he wanted the rematch with Belfort, so I think there was a feeling they owed it to him. They respected him enough. Once he showed he could still beat a viable fighter, although Boetsch is definitely no Vitor Belfort. But as soon as Belfort made contact with him, he fell over and had that same stumbling effect that he had in their second fight. It's just Dan Henderson doesn't have the chin he used to have. Once upon a time, he had an iron chin, and he could survive the early Vitor Belfort blitz. And, you know, that went away a long time ago after a lot of vicious knockouts. I think the war with Shogun probably is where Dan Henderson left his chin behind.
Well, yeah, and I mean, he's 45. Like, at some point, the wear just takes its toll. Like, even if he had never been through those wars, I mean, he's training in the gym, he's sparring, he's getting beat up. Sooner or later, that's gonna go. Like, nobody's chin lasts forever. It just doesn't happen.
No, it definitely doesn't. And if you look back since that fight at UFC 139 with Shogun Rua in 2011, hard to believe it's been that long, but he's lost 6 UFC fights and won 2. So, you know, taking a lot of damage in that time. Just, you know, it's not even a sad end. It's totally respectable end. I mean, I'm glad that wasn't more beating. I mean, it was quick, relatively painless. Took one big head kick, couple of shots down on the ground. I don't really think it has any significance. I do hope Henderson retires. I don't see any reason for him to continue fighting.
Yeah, I don't think he will, though. He just seems like the kind of guy who's going to keep telling everybody that he knows when he's done until somebody has to drag him out of there on a stretcher. Honestly.
Absolutely. And with Bellator out there, I mean, you know, they booked Royce Gracie versus Ken Shamrock in a rematch, and they've got Kimbo Slice fighting, what's the guy's name, Dada 5000 or whatever. I mean, they would happily have Dan Henderson out there, rolling out there in a wheelchair, or toddling up in a walker, whatever. You know, they'd book Hendo versus Shamrock in a heartbeat. So, you know, if Hendo wants to continue, I'm sure he will, although I don't know if the UFC will want to continue. But it doesn't really tell us anything about Vitor Belfort. Just such a quick fight, you know, against a guy who basically has no chin left. So it's hard to say, you know, what that means for Vitor Belfort, who's nearing 40 himself.
Yeah, Belfort is also way on the weird end of the aging curve. There's no good reason that he should be a top fighter anymore, but we don't know from this. The only shot he landed in this fight ended it. So, what does that tell you? Like, that tells you nothing.
Yeah, and his last fight was against a middleweight champ, Chris Weidman, and he acquitted himself pretty well in that fight while he lasted.
Yeah, I mean, there is an inkling that, you know, basically we've seen guys who do steroids last longer. Like, they have a much longer career in general.
Yeah, and both Henderson and Vitor are known TRT users, testosterone replacement, and that is the uber steroid. And Vitor has also failed drug tests for using illegal steroids back in 2007, and obviously was roided to the gills in the late 90s when he puffed up to looked like the Michelin Man when he fought Randy Couture way back. I think it was UFC 17. So yeah, he should be set for a long career given all the chemicals he's put in his body over the years. And for a guy whose bread and butter has been speed, he's still pretty quick. I mean, he was able to hurt Weidman early. he faded later. I mean, it was a very short fight, but it had a big momentum swings, and he had Weidman hurt early, and very curious to see what he does from here, but definitely not finished. I don't know. I'm not crying out for him to get a title shot or anything either.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a few guys floating at the top of middleweight right now who are just absolute killers, and one of them will get Vitor. Whether it's Yoel Romero or Luke Rockhold again, because Luke Rockhold would want that fight back, or Jacare or somebody like that, they'll get Vitor, and if he wins that a fight like that again, that would be really remarkable.
It really would. Although he's so dangerous, I could see him beating anybody out there on any given day. I mean, if he can connect early and pour it on, there's very few people who can withstand that kind of assault. I think Romero in particular could be vulnerable to that kind of sudden assault. But we won't. I'd pick Romero or Jacare or Rockhold over Vitor, but I'd give him a definite underdog's puncher's chance in any of those bouts.
Well, I mean, the big thing he seems to have learned is patience. That's been like the thing.
And the kicks. Yep. Adding the kicks has been a huge, real, enormous game changer for a guy who used to be a pretty one-dimensional straight punching boxer.
Yeah, and it's weird. I mean, he defies all logic, and he's probably a testament to what good drugs will do you over your career.
And on top of some amazing athletic gifts.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, like, you have to be if you're a top 5 athlete. He's always been an amazing athlete, and off and on a reasonably skilled fighter. He's always been the kind of guy who could throw any win out the window in a heartbeat. But he's gained a lot of skill over time.
Yeah, and he's one thing we've never seen from him is the ability to really win a fight in the deep rounds. Like, this is a guy who's had all these great moments early in fights. He's improved on that, but he's not one of these guys that's going to go to war for 5 rounds and pour it on in the end. Although, he did add some guard game. I mean, he almost broke John Jones's arm, so that's something he didn't have early on. So he's possibly the most dangerous Vitor Belfort we've seen in a while, although not quite as dangerous as he was when he was just TRTing his balls off. I mean, the first Rockhold fight, he had a run there when he was on TRT where those are some good drugs he was doing.
I don't think he's the most dangerous. I do think he would lose the fights that he was winning. Maybe not the Bisping fight, but the Rockhold. I think he would lose that Rockhold fight a second time around. He might lose the fight against Anthony Johnson a second time around.
Yeah, quite possibly.
But he's still dangerous, and until we see some guys in the top 10 at middleweight start to knock him off, it's impossible to know exactly where he is.
Yeah. So that was the headliner, but the rest of the card was pretty fun. It built up steam. Started a little bit slow, but built up steam as we went along and had a nice 4-fight finish streak to end the card. Co-main event: Glover Teixeira demolished Patrick Cummins in the second round. Cummins, I thought, acquitted himself fairly well, getting some takedowns, avoided some punches early, but I think it was that combo at the end of the first round that hurt Cummins, and he was really not in the fight after that.
Yeah, and he just takes. Every time he gets hit, he takes it so badly. Like, every time he gets hit, you just see his head snap back, and he's getting rocked, and he wears the damage really poorly. His eyes always get bloody, and he has trouble getting hit. But the thing is, too, I mean, this is a guy who he had 1 fight in 2010, 1 in 2012, and he's only started his MMA career in earnest in 2013. So you're talking about a guy who's been fighting like consistently for 3 years, stepping in against Glover Teixeira. How good was he really going to do?
Yeah, he didn't have. I mean, his best hope was that Teixeira had aged dramatically since the last time we saw him, and that was clearly not the case. And those jabs, I mean, Teixeira, you still don't see enough jabs in MMA. I mean, Teixeira showed what a jab can do. They were head-snapping jabs, and Cummins he couldn't slip them, and they added up fast. And so, Teixeira is somebody, we've seen him get destroyed by former champ John Jones, but I'd still like to see him fight a lot of guys at the top of the division. Gustafsson would be fun. I think he could, uh, he beat OSP. Um,
Rumble. He hasn't
yeah,
fought
I'd love to
Rumble
see
yet.
him fight Rumble.
Even Bader, or even Bader again. I would watch him fight Bader again. Bader
Oh,
seems to be the best
definitely.
he's ever been.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure Bader would want a rematch. That was a pretty close fight, and I think Bader has improved. I still would probably lean towards Teixeira, but either way, I mean, he's ranked fourth right now in the division. John Jones is coming back, so everybody's presumably going to drop down a rung on the ladder. But
Hmm.
lots of good fights for Teixeira out there, and I think he's still got. Seems like he's still got a few good years in his career. So that was a fun one. Cummins, I don't know. At his age, I just don't see him ever developing into a real contender.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sold on the age being as bad a thing for him as people think. I mean, we've seen Yoel Romero keep improving as he at a very late age, starting late. We've seen Joe Warren keep improving, starting late. We've seen a few guys do it, and I kind of expect he will. The biggest problem for me is just that light heavyweight is so thin that it's whether he can improve without constantly fighting the very top tier guys and losing badly.
Yeah, that's been something that's held Ryan Bader a lot. I
Yep.
think is just and over Vince St. Preux too.
Yep.
You sail over, you sail past the Jimmy Manoas, and then suddenly find yourself up against you know the Glover Teixeiras of the division, and that's a very big leap to make. But then bantamweight Thomas Almeida in the third fight down from the top demolished Anthony Birchak first round KO. Really impressive performance. Start with what was a spinning back elbow, and then
Yeah.
combos.
Yeah, he just pieced Birchak up, frankly. I mean, Birchak started nice and slow, had that good patient game plan, picking his shots and all that, and then he just decided he wasn't getting enough done and tried to run at Almeida and beat him up, and that was just a terrible idea.
Yeah, bad idea, bad idea. And Almeida is somebody I think who might be able. I think it's premature to start talking about title contention for him, but as sort of stale as the bantamweight division has been, I look forward. He's eighth right now with a bullet, and I look forward to seeing him shoot up the charts because I think a number of guys up there: Brian Caraway, Aljamain Sterling, McDonald. I think he could get past all those guys right now.
Yeah, Sterling would be a real tough one, but Sterling wants that fight, so that would be, that would
It's
be
a
fun.
natural match to make. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
It's Almeida's just I think this is the most impressive win of his career, and I think one of the big things we're seeing and something that because he's gotten obviously a lot of flack for being very hittable and defensively flawed, but because he's so young, because his career is still pretty early, like he's just fought a ton early in his career, which is why he has this 20-0 record or 21-0 now. But because his career's so young, I expect to see him improve a lot and potentially like he looked pretty decent defensively. He didn't eat much in the way of punishment in this fight.
no, I didn't see him. I didn't see him take a lot, and he is at an age where athletes can improve by leaps and bounds. And he's getting good coaching, and I'm very high on this kid. I think he's definitely got some rough patches. I don't see him taking the title this year or next, but maybe next year. But he's definitely in the hunt. I want to look forward to seeing more of him. Then we had lightweight Alex Oliveira demolish Peter Hallmann in the third round. Um,
Yeah.
that was I don't know. The KO made me forget the rest of the fight, but it was not my favorite fight before that.
Yeah, it was all right. I mean, two very flawed fighters fighting with a lot of flaws. Oliveira still doesn't have quite. He still gets wild on his feet, and his ground game is not good.
No,
And
that was pretty
Hallman just
clear.
yeah, Hallman just isn't good enough anywhere to really consistently beat guys. And there may be a case too of him kind of being off the juice and not being quite as physically imposing.
It's quite possible with the improved drug testing regime in the UFC. You're seeing a lot of guys,
And he
falling
did
down.
fail one, so I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to strike against him. And I mean, the KO was lovely. It's just one of those. Oliveira looked better off a full camp, but he's still got a lot of improving to do. So it'll be interesting to see how much, how he develops, because everything he does well is also like a problem for him.
Yeah, yeah. I don't see either. I don't see Oliveira cracking the top 10. Maybe cracking the top 15. I don't see him cracking the top 10.
I could see him as like a Varner-esque sort of action fighter. One of those guys that's like always exciting and in some, an action fighter fans want to watch.
Yeah, definitely I could see that. And I think if we were in an era where there were more pools of fighters, like back in the day when we had the WEC and the UFC, but right now it's basically Bellator sort of has a decent lightweight division, but I'd like to see Oliveira in a Charleroi talent pool. I think he
Yeah,
could.
we can really just murk some guys and shine a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't see that happening in the UFC. And speaking of UFC lightweights, Rashid Magomedov, I think he exposed Gilbert Burns as a fairly limited fighter.
I don't know that he exposed him. He's just way ahead of him. I mean, Gilbert Burns is another guy who started fighting in 2012. Like, he's a newcomer. Magomedov started fighting back in 2008. Like,
He's definitely got more experience. I just didn't see anything Burns can go back to the drawing board where he's ever going to beat Magomedov.
Well, the big thing is that Blackzilians and the Henry Hooft striking style. It's like it's a super slow build. He's working on guys like getting these basic fundamentals down to perfection and working on them and building them constantly. And in the meantime, it doesn't work necessarily that well. It's tough. Like Burns, I mean, he took Magomedov down a couple times. That's really impressive. I mean, Burns is an elite athlete and a great grappler, but he just fought absolute poison for him right now.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that he's done. Exposed might have been too harsh, but I think exposed the limitations of Burns, definitely where Burns is now. And I just feel like submission based guys, it's going to take him a while to add a really dangerous striking game. I don't know if he has the raw power to ever be that dangerous on his feet. And it's just, you're not a great wrestler. You're not a great striker. You're a great submission guy. There's a ceiling to that, and it's not that high.
He's a pretty good wrestler. He's not a bad wrestler.
But he's not a great wrestler. He's not somebody
he's above average. I mean, he's better than, I would say, 70% of the UFC.
But he's never going to be one of these Sean Shirk, Blast Jeffrey feet with the double legs, kind of.
I guess.
I mean, it's a serviceable thing. I just think that submission-based guys.
He does submission base. A submission base is generally the least useful thing at the very top of the division. Yeah. And so he has to be a very good striker to get there. And I think the Blackzilians can turn him into that. But it might be 4 years from now. We're talking about Burns being a great fighter who is ready to fight the elite.
Yeah, and it's going to be hard to keep a UFC career going for 4 years if you're not at the elite level. So, so we'll see. But I was pretty disappointed because Burns is somebody that had me pretty excited, and I'm just not that excited about Magomedov.
He doesn't have the kill. He's never going to be a fan favorite because he's not a killer. He's not a guy who, when he sees you hurt, turns it on. He's a guy that when he sees you hurt, he waits until you open yourself up again, and then he hurts you a little more.
Yeah. He just keeps it on slow simmer all the time, and I really prefer more of a raging boil. But light heavyweight Corey Anderson and Fabio Maldonado, another slow simmer of a fight. I mean, in retrospect, it was pretty obvious Corey Anderson was going to win this. Stylistically, he has it all over Maldonado. I think Maldonado acquitted himself better than I expected. He was able to get up a few times. He was able to fend off some of the takedowns. But when your game is a slow, dominant body shot boxing game without knockout power, and you go up against somebody with the wrestling of Corey Anderson, you're pretty screwed.
Yeah, I mean, Maldonado was screwed here, and the only thing this fight was a test of how smart is Corey Anderson.
And he's smart enough to do what he needed to do to beat Fabio Maldonado.
Exactly, because Corey Anderson hasn't shown himself to be some great knockout artist yet either, so it's not like he was just going to go out there and absolutely KO somebody whose head is made out of concrete.
Yeah,
So it's just, can you outwork this guy for 3 rounds?
and he did. He passed that test with flying colors, and but I still don't see Corey Anderson. I mean, you look at the very top of that division, and
He's on the Ryan Bader track. I mean, that's, Ryan Bader, OSP, he could easily be a top 5 guy, but you're going to see him lose a few times in a few fights where you just are like, oh, people are going to be like, oh, he's trash, he's garbage. And, slowly but surely he will continue to climb to the point where he's inside of a title shot.
quite possibly. It still makes me sad how far that division has fallen. It used to be. I remember back in the day, it was the marquee division.
When all the middleweights could do enough steroids to balloon up to 205 pounds and
That's
just
true.
be monsters.
Back when we had science on our side, those were the days. Anyway, so let's move on to the preliminary card. Headliner Gleason Tebow defeated Abel Trujillo. Pretty quick ref stoppage on the rear naked choke. He didn't tap to, and frankly, it didn't look like it was on all that tight.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that fight. I mean, I think Trujillo gave the ref every reason to think that he'd gone out. Like, his arms were out and his eyes were closed, and he for a brief second looked out. But the ref definitely probably jumped in a little quick there, and that sucks. But Trujillo was getting worked. I mean, I don't know.
Tebow looked really good. Tebow's looked pretty good, and again,
Yeah.
Tebow's like the definition of UFC journeyman. I mean, he's up there with the record for most UFC fights. And has he ever been in the top 10 of the division?
I don't think so. I
I
don't
mean,
think he ever has been. He is the monolith that keeps the gates to the top 15, and he's still immovable. Like, this was his test to me, was, because Trujillo is the kind of fighter that Tebow, of 4 years ago beats every single time. And so this was that test of, like, is he still able to beat this guy? And
yes,
it looks like it, yeah.
Yes, he absolutely is. And it's hard to get that invested in Trujillo. He's not all that likable a guy with the criminal history and everything, but he's capable of some vicious violence. And so you keep hoping he's going to put it together. But Tebow, he clanged the gate shut on the dude.
Yeah. And Trujillo's getting to the point where he's closer and closer to being what should be a finished product. So that window of, like, where we should be seeing big improvement is slowly starting to close.
Yeah, and so before that, we had lightweight Johnny Case decision in Yan Cabral. That's a fight. It was hard to get invested enough to really care enough to argue with the decision, but I had a 2-1 for Cabral.
I thought Case should have won it, but it was really close. Like, you really are giving him the third round based on his last 45 seconds of that round.
Yeah.
And I think he had the only damaging offense in that round. So it was barely enough for me to give it to him, but not enough to make it a major point of contention for me.
No, mostly I was happy the fight was over. And then, and it was a weird undercard because you had the two very quick fights. They had the long decision with Cabral, but Thiago Tavares ended Clay Guida's night in 39 seconds. Fastest I can remember Guida getting beat.
I think that's his fast. It's certainly his fastest ever submission loss, and it is his fastest ever loss. Yeah, he had a 1 minute 17 second submission loss early in his career to some nobody, but otherwise, usually when he's ever lost, it's been much later on.
Yeah, I mean, he's used to go to decision all the time. Kenny Florian took 2 rounds to beat him. But pretty rookie mistake going in there against somebody with the jiu-jitsu of Thiago Tavares that early before you're even sweaty. And Tavares clearly saw that coming and was ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, Tavares has always been hyper dangerous early in fights. That's kind of his thing, is that he's a kind of a 1-round guy. He's really explosive early in the fight, and then the further it goes, the more he fades. And Guida, I guess, didn't get the memo. I don't know.
I
Like,
don't know. I mean, he was playing his game, going for the
yep.
takedown. But in recent years, Guida has been more patient and more willing to stand up with guys. And Tavares, it's not like Tavares is a knockout artist. He's got some pop in his hands, but
But he's
um,
also got a glass jaw, so he's usually not
yeah,
that willing to trade for very long.
yeah. And I think Guida could easily have fended off Tavares's takedowns, but he chose to get aggressive and made a big mistake. So I don't know that this really means anything. I think both of these guys are journeymen on the
I hope
tail
it
end of their
bumps.
careers.
I hope it bumps Guida out of the top 15 without putting Tavares in the top 15, because Guida's a ranked guy right now and Tavares isn't. But I wouldn't give Tavares a top 15 ranking off that win.
No, but I mean, I wouldn't get all that upset about it
No.
if he did. I mean, if you look at who else is in the top 15, I mean, Dennis Seaver, Tatsuya Kawajiri, these are guys that are just kind of there. I mean,
Yeah, that division's really they're waiting for somebody to take that leap. They've got a bunch of guys kind of floating around just outside the Diego Brandao, Sam Cecilia, Maximo Blanco, Hani Jason, Godofredo Pepe, who've never quite been able to make that jump to being ranked fighters.
yeah. So, but uh, I don't know. We'll see. Tavares is generally fun to watch, and I think Guido will probably be back, and Guido hasn't really been that fun to watch in a while, but we'll see. Then you had Chas Skelly beat Kevin Souza by rear naked choke in the second round. At this point, I have no memory of that fight. What happened?
Um, Skelly was beating up Souza from a lot of the first round, and then ate a huge uppercut and got dropped.
Yes, the flash knockout. I remember that now.
Yep.
And got dropped, and then I managed to ride it out and come back.
Yep, and the Souza was then winning for a lot of it after that. Was picking him apart, doing pretty well. But he was just too willing to engage Skelly in his game and couldn't avoid enough of the wrestling, enough of the takedowns, engaged once too often. And Skelly's a back take expert, so you
Yep,
know, the moment Souza gave up his back once, that was it.
yep. And impressive performance by Skelly, especially surviving the quick flash knockout. I mean,
Yeah.
he got dropped. He admitted he got knocked out, but he woke up as soon as he hit the ground. And the fight. I don't think the fight should have been stopped. And pretty impressive performance. Then when there were 3 fights on the Fight Pass card, welterweight Viscardi Andrade beat Ghassan Umalatov in a tedious 3-round decision. Nobody ever put their
Yeah,
foot
we're
on
already
the
done
gas on
talking
that.
about that fight.
Yeah, that was awful. Jimmy Rivera and Pedro Munoz though had a very fun 3-round fight. Split
That
decision
was a
win for
great
Rivera.
fight.
Yeah,
That was a great fight. I'm glad they gave it to Rivera. I thought he deserved it, but it was a hell of a good fight.
it was. Rivera was throwing some sharp uppercuts repeatedly, and Munoz eventually kind of caught onto that, and started to counter with some other moves. But I thought Rivera won it too, and it was very fun, very action packed fight.
Yeah, he's got great power. He's got really sharp boxing. The only thing that worries me and that we saw in that fight is that because he doesn't really do anything other than box, guys who have a more varied arsenal can kind of start to open up holes in his game, and he got rocked a few times by Munoz. Like Munoz was able to, hit him with some knees and some kicks and some elbows and some other stuff in there because Rivera just eventually got a little predictable, but he still throws enough heat and he's still sharp enough that he was able to stay in the fight and keep landing bombs, and he took it. But it does create a few questions about if Rivera starts jumping into the top 15 and some of the other high ranked guys, if you fight somebody like Thomas Almeida, for instance, is that variation, that ability to do more than just box, going to start to cost him?
Yeah, I think it definitely will. There's a ceiling on one-dimensional guys, but he sure is fun to watch. So
Yeah.
that was good. And Munoz, he's coming off a suspension, right, for
Yep.
drug test failure. So pretty good comeback performance. Look forward to seeing him fight again. And in the opener, Mateus Nicolau submitted Bruno Rodriguez with a Japanese necktie. Not something we see a ton of.
Yeah, it was a good submission, fun fight, good showing from Nicolau. He did pretty well. He, he still got a little bit beat up by some of Rodriguez's flashier stuff, but he looks like he's a fun technical fighter. He's got a nice sharp boxing game, obviously some fun submission tools too, and it's good to see another fighter at flyweight. So I'm always happy to see a new flyweight come in, and it should be fun there.
Yep, should be a good one. But back to the main event, Vitor Belfort demolished Dan Henderson very quickly. Well, let's see the official time, 2 minutes, 7 seconds. And really, it seemed quicker in retrospect because the first minute and a half, nothing basically happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's old dude MMA. Like,
yeah,
that is quintessential old dude MMA, is a minute and a half of staring contest, and then the first strike ends it.
Yeah, that was pretty much. Although Dan did land some of his patented bad low kicks, but
yeah, it's like we're watching some samurai duel or something on some Japanese movie where it's like that. They're just staring at each other, and then the screen flashes and one guy's dead.
That was pretty much it. Belfort landed a head kick and finished it with some ground and pound. Glover Teixeira demolished Patrick Cummins in the second round. Thomas Almeida, bantamweight prospect, beat Anthony Birchak with a first round KO. Alex Oliveira got a first round KO. So 4 straight KOs overall. Pretty good card. Although the pacing of these Fox Sports 1 events from Brazil, they're effing brutal. I mean, it just goes on and on, and tons of commercials. But
I think especially in like the undercard, in the prelims, we had like 3 20-minute breaks, and it was just like, oh god, I'm just glad that the last 20-minute break was right before the main card, so that I actually knew that they didn't have any content for the next 20 minutes. I could go do something else.
Yeah, and you can't really blame them for those because those are set. The 20-minute breaks were at points where they were set. They couldn't start the next round because they owed it, waiting for the next segment of the program to start. So, and it was, the T-Bow fight went 1 minute 45 seconds. I don't think anybody was expecting that out of a Gleason T-Bow Abel Trujillo fight. But it is what it is. And next week, we've got UFC 193 with Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm. So that should be some fun. Although the rest of the card isn't really that great. It's basically
I'm just looking forward to Joanna and Jacek. As long as she, makes mincemeat out of Valerie Letourneau, my night will be complete.
Yeah, and we do have Mark Hunt and Antonio Silva in a rematch that should be something. So.
It'll be weird. I mean, I think Mark Hunt's a vegetarian now. He's looking pretty damn trim. It's
he
weird.
is. So it should be an interesting fight. But anyway, we'll be back with previews and the whole bit, the Care Don't Care preview, the vivisection, everything. Eugene will have a Knuckle Up Sunday night live, and we'll post it on Bloody Elbow on Monday. We'll have another episode of If I Did It. And so stay tuned. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube. Subscribe to MMA Nation on iTunes. Give us a thumbs up on the video. Follow us on Twitter at @TheZaneSimon, @KidNate. Read us at BloodyElbow.com. And adios, MMA aficionados. Thanks, Zane.